All right. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. So, Mette is our next speaker, and she is one of the Golden Door Rex Karmaveer medalists. And I like that. And she is a powerhouse, I would say. She is. She is an advocate for gender equality, I would say, for speaking and beyond, not just for speaking. She is the founder of Keynote, right? Keynote and other things. That's not just one of the things. And of course, can you see her book links there? There we go. Yes, Bogdan has posted there on Kobo, her book links. And Mette is, when I say powerhouse, she's able to mobilize teams of people. And because she has this ability to, when she comes up with a concept or a mission, that she can inspire them to carry it out. It's not so easy, you know. You know, when you launch a mission, it's like you're an entrepreneur, and like myself, we're very similar in that way. That pioneering entrepreneurship personality that requires that requires superior leadership, and then you become a walking inspiration, and then you keep doing it. One thing I noticed about you is your structure. I'm more fluid. I'm structured also, but I think you're a little bit more structured than me. That's one thing. And we did a session together before on the books, right? So I could tell that. So yeah, you're very structured. You have all the methods, and that is one of the successes of a truth creator. You are a truth creator. You're not just a truth writer. You are a truth creator. So before I say anything more, let them hear from you, because then they will really see in your essence. All right. So I hand you over to Mette Johansson, who is originally from Norway? Denmark, and living in Singapore. All right.
Yes.
You. Okay, proceed.
Thank you very much. Until you talked about fluidity and structure, I thought you might as well have been describing yourself. I mean, mobilizing teams and inspiring others, that is what you've been doing this entire event, isn't it? And it's interesting that you're mentioning Denmark, where I'm from originally, because that is in fact where I want to start. I grew up in two different countries. I grew up in Denmark and the Netherlands.
Okay.
I started my schooling in the Netherlands, and that's a country where being frank is seen as a virtue and even as being respectful to other people. So if you were to listen to my talk today and you would not like it, if you were Dutch, you would probably say, oh, that was awful, or saying even things like, that sucked. Now, in Denmark, where I ended my schooling, that is when people think that they're a little bit more polite than the Dutch. So they would probably, instead of that, say things like, Mette, can we agree that today was your worst presentation ever? You know, so in Northern Europe, people are very straightforward. I grew up with calling out the elephant in the room. Things were discussed over and over again. Debates are taking place. And it's one of the reasons why you have loads of different political parties in Northern countries. Now, it does mean that I grew up with speaking up. I see it as an advantage because I'm not afraid of stating my opinion. It comes quite natural to me. Maybe not everybody sees it as an advantage, but I do. But in fact, living in now 11 different countries also helped me to speak my truth. Because whether I lived in Holland, in the Netherlands, or in Denmark, you know, I looked native wherever I was. But when I went to Japan to live in Japan, then all of a sudden I stood out. Literally. If I wore heels, I would stand out above the crowds in the subway. I would tower out. You could see me from across the train car, the blonde hair that was there. And it was difficult to fit in. Of course, I tried, but fitting in 100%, that would be impossible.
Okay.
So the advantage of when nobody knows you is that you don't have to try and fit in, because whatever you do, it won't work. There are no strings from expectations attached, right? You can just be you. So that helped me find my authentic self.
Okay, great.
And it helps in speaking up about our truth in the sense that I want to speak about today. And you mentioned structured. So I have 3 different points for you today about this. 3 different points.
I'm going to give the stage completely to you. And I'm
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, see you. Okay.
Thanks, Tahira. So this helps in speaking up about our truth in 3 different ways. Why is it important that we speak up about our truth? Now, if you are on social media these days, you will probably have noticed that everything is about black and white, good or bad. And it's important that we get out of this. Stating everything as good or bad and black and white, it's not very good for having meaningful conversations. Another reason why it's important to speak our truth is also that in many companies, people don't feel safe to speak up. Employees are scared to share all their opinions and even their identities, their true selves. People are afraid of the impact that speaking up may have on their image. They are afraid of if they make a mistake, it might have repercussions. This is alarming, or as back to the Dutch, as the backwards should say, this would be bloody alarming, because progress is, of course, based on everybody sharing their insights and speaking their minds, isn't it? Now, we have had, during the last few days, dozens of talks, of hours of listening to very inspirational talks about truth and integrity. We've had amazing speakers provide their perspectives. Now, if you're one of them, I'm probably not speaking to you right now. It is rather speaking to the ones who think that, oh, wow, Tahira was inspirational, or Kevin, Natalie, Viswa were inspirational. If you found that these people were inspirational and you're dreaming of being like that one day, then this talk is for you. It's also for you if you think that maybe you're too scared to ever speak in front of other people, whether it's a smaller or a larger audience. Those are the people that I'm speaking to right now. So the 3 points that I want to share with you today is first about, it's always about the others. When you want to speak up your truth, it's important to start with the others. I had a mentor once who, he would always have this mantra before he went on stage and say, for them, for them, for them. It took me a while to get it. And then one day I had a coachee and I totally understood it when I went through all of this with her. She was to speak in front of a small audience, 20 people, and she was very nervous. I was sitting on the front row, ready to prompt her for whenever she forgot her line. And of course, this already happened within the first minute. I prompted her, but still, it just meant that she was even more nervous about her next lines that she might forget, and which, of course, also happened. The next time we met up, she shared with me how she just felt that she bombed and how horrible it was. Now, she also shared with me that after her short presentation, 2 people came up to her and wanted to know more about her services that she had just shared with them. So that's when I asked her, you felt that you completely bombed this? And she said, yeah, with this face of expression of half embarrassed and half frustrated. And there were 2 people who came up to you afterwards and said, I'd like to know more about your services. Yes, she said, again, with this facial expression of half frustration, half embarrassment. I let it sink in for a second. And then I shared with her, I believe that you had a great success. Imagine you pitched to 20 people and 2 people came up and asked you for services. That's a 10% success rate. That's awesome. Most speakers are only dreaming of such a success rate. Throughout that coaching session, she completely transformed. She got much more confident in what she wanted to share because all of a sudden she understood the principle about for them, about that it is you are offering a precious gift to your audience. It's always about your audience. It's not about you. It never was about you. It will never be about you. It's about the audience. So if you have a precious gift to give to the audience and they accept it, that's when you've done a good job. She completely understood that. And in order to prove that it worked, I will also share with you that she went on to be the winner of a pitch competition that she participated in not so long later. That's the power of focusing on your audience. You can only leave a legacy. One thing that we've also spoken about quite a bit here today, right? If others are interested in what you are passionate about. It's the first step. Make sure that you focus on the audience, whether it's an audience of one, few, or many, and make sure that you listen to others, that you truly seek to understand others' perspectives. You're the one who can be opening doors to others, as Tahira said in her opening on the first day. My second point, if voicing your opinion seems risky, take small steps. One small step you can take is asking questions instead of making a statement. Now, often the right question will make the room see the other side of the issue. I do this in Singapore all the time because I know I'm quite outspoken and I know that some sensitive issues you should not be outspoken about in Singapore. So instead I ask questions. In fact, I also did it at this conference at some point of time where we were getting into something where I thought, I better tread carefully here. So I asked a question instead. So with powerful questions, you can get other people to open their minds perhaps to a different perspective. There is a skill to asking questions. Make sure that your questions are neutral, open-ended, and non-judgmental. For instance, if somebody comes with an idea to you that you find is utterly ridiculous, it's not about saying, isn't that an utterly ridiculous question? No, there's better ways of asking questions. Now, say, for instance, that I'm suggesting you, let's fly to the moon. If you say that's ridiculous, you will probably get me to bend up a fence and I will start being defensive and we won't have the best conversation. If you ask me, so Mette, tell me more about this idea. Or if you ask me, what is needed in order for us to get to the moon? You'll probably find one of two things, that either I'm good friends with Elon Musk and I have a great plan for going to the moon that was beyond what you had been able to imagine before. So you're learning something new. Or that I will find out, that was maybe not the best of all plans. So I will start changing my mind. That is the power of questions. And of course, the good questions are things like, what is your idea about it? How are you planning this? What results do you expect? What challenges do you foresee? Simply some open, neutral, open-ended questions. Of course, I'm not saying that if you have a strong opinion that you should shy away from it. If you dare to speak up, go ahead. This is for if you want to take those little steps towards becoming more confident in voicing your opinion, this is what I would advise you to do. Great questions are more powerful than objections. It gets other people to think and it gets other people to see different perspectives. The third point I want to stress today is, in fact, what I usually have my keynote talks about. It is about talking from a place of truth and integrity or authenticity. Speak about what truly matters to you. Speak from a place of values, your personal core values. When you're passionate and value-driven, you set the stage for solving big issues in this world. At Keynote Women Speakers, where Tahira just introduced that I'm leading this initiative, I founded it 3 years ago, we have plenty of examples of women who we support in finding their authentic voices, finding their places of truth and integrity. Now, I'd like to boil my usual authenticity talk down to a few sentences only, to a few points only. And I'd like to stress it through one story about when people come to me and say, a directory full of women speakers. Women usually don't really like to speak from stage, do they? And especially event organizers, they will say, oh, but I asked so many women and they all said no. It is true that a lot of event organizers get rejections from women that the women don't want to speak on stage. But I may have found the reason why this is so. Now, on average, if you take a woman and a man, they're equally qualified. But the man will typically say, yeah, I can do it. And the woman will discredit her a bit, saying, I'm not sure whether I'm the right person for it. Okay, so women think less of themselves than men do. So if you ask a woman, she has more of a tendency to reject it because she thinks she's not good enough. All right, now we know the root cause why women say no, so it can be fixed. All we need to do is to say, you are an inspirational person. You have lots of interesting experience and relevant knowledge that you can share with others, and they can learn from you. You can go on stage and share this. And that's when most women say, yes, sure, I'll do that. That sounds interesting. And the other point that's related to this is, what about if you are a woman and you haven't even gotten the offer to speak on stage? Now, these women, I also tend to nudge to go on stage. How do we do this? By finding their authentic voices, their places of truth, of integrity. How? Very often when women talk about, oh, this is cool, I want to do this, they start talking about their passions. I dive deeper into it and we talk more about it. And at some point of time, I say, wouldn't it be amazing if you could be on stage and share this with other people? And a large audience would be inspired to do exactly this, what you are doing. And that's very often when women say, yeah, maybe that would be kind of cool. So that's another place that's another way of getting women to speak up, to simply motivate people to speak about something that's important to you. And to give you the very short summary of my talk on authenticity, what I focus on very much is make sure that you know your values. Do a deep dive into your values, your personal core, deeper inner values. When you write those down on paper after a long excavation, of course, very often your purpose just jumps out of the paper. And when you follow your purpose, that is when your passion is ignited. And when your passion is ignited, that is when you have energy to do extraordinary things. We all know it, right? When we follow our purpose, our passion is ignited and we can do things from early morning to late evening and we still don't feel tired in the evening. Well, we might be tired but not exhausted and we have energy to continue it the next day. On top of it, if we are good and inspiring other people, then it will be multiplied. You can multiply this energy and your efforts potentially comes to, and it's almost like Tahira prompted me for this in the beginning, your effort become a movement. So that's the power of living your truth and integrity. So to sum up the 3 steps, speak up and focus on your audience. What's in it for them? When they are presented with this precious gift that you're giving them, that's when they will listen. You will have their ears. The second point is you can start with small steps if needed. If you're not ready for that big audience, in smaller audiences, if you're scared of speaking up, if you're afraid of any repercussions, what people may think, ask questions instead. Those open-ended, non-judgmental, neutral questions that get people to think. And the third point is speak about your purpose and ignite your passion. That will unleash energy to do extraordinary things. And when you add these 3 things together, that's when you can even create a movement. That is speaking your truth. Thank you. Any questions? Tahira is saying Q&A. How would you like to structure this Q&A, Tahira? People can post questions. What are some of the questions you would have? Or do you even want to challenge me on some of these things? I'm very happy to be challenged on it. How if someone feels their authentic self won't be accepted by the audience? Oh, if your authentic self won't be accepted by the audience, then you might be in front of the wrong audience. Seek a better audience. If it is your authentic self and you feel that is not accepted, it's back to maybe what I briefly mentioned about psychological safety at companies, that if you don't feel safe to speak up about what's truly important to you, you might not be at the right company. Of course, some companies' cultures, a lot of company cultures are like that, and you may have to bite the bullet to a certain extent. But especially if we speak up about things that are important to us, we should have friends that are just accepting us for who we are and what we speak about, shouldn't we? Isn't that a fundamental basis of friendship? So if people don't expect you for who you are, then maybe you're not hanging out with the right people. Now, I know that sometimes there are certain things that we don't want to share with everybody. And I don't think that we necessarily need to share 100% of ourselves to everybody. This is one of the things I speak a lot about with authenticity, for instance, that when people hear you need to bring your full self to work, people very often say, okay, I've got to bring my family, right? I've got to state I'm a parent, where to me, that's not necessary. It's not necessary to go to work and say, I'm a mother of two and I work in finance, because what's relevant in that situation, right? As long as you're comfortable to speak up about things that are relevant in that situation, 90%, 80% of the things in your life, then you're probably pretty good already. All right, then another one. I face it, Tahira said. It can also be in the delivery, correct? Absolutely. Whether it is in the delivery, how you deliver the message, absolutely. And that's back to the point for the audience. Have you delivered your point in a way that is relevant to the audience? You might have something that's very controversial. If you put it in a way that is not accepted by the audience, then it's not going to land. So yes, of course, it's again for them. Make sure that you focus on the things that are in it for them. All right, maybe you are not hanging out with the right people if they can't accept you as you are. Of course, it is also about meeting each other halfway, right? I have to make sure that I don't have black and white answers. If we are not being nice to others, of course, none of the above applies, but that's, I hope, not your point, right? Okay, disclosure about boundaries is not authenticity. Exactly, it's not about the boundaries. We will always have areas where we are private about it, where we share things with our loved ones that we don't share with work. We share things with our partners, our spouses, that we don't share with our children. And that doesn't mean that we're inauthentic. It's simply that we're focusing on what's relevant at the moment. And it's okay to have boundaries. There's one person that I've spoken to very recently who was, we had this discussion about being private versus being authentic. Now, I think it's okay to be private and not to want to show too many things about your private life. As long as you still are authentic in the way that you are living by certain values and that you're treating people with respect, you have the truth and integrity to live by your values, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to say what you did over the weekend. There's a big difference there to me. Okay, and then Angela says, so the audience we seek must have a friendship relationship with us. Are we to expect our audience to be friendly towards us? Thank you for challenging me on these things, because it's important that we don't draw this as a black and white situation again. I don't think, when I said friends, that was I thought the question was also related to the friends that you hang around with. We don't necessarily need to be friendly with our audience. It's okay to be speaking your truth in front of audiences that are maybe quite far away from your point of view. Although if there's too much of a distance between you, you may not be able to get very close to each other. I've experienced this myself as a press spokesperson for a large multinational company in a field that's very, very controversial. And I felt it was a great technology that could solve a lot of the world's issues. NGOs were very much against it. And speaking to NGOs was just not fruitful at all. I mean, you can speak your truth. You can share what you feel is great about this technology and how the world population stands to benefit. If people have a complete opposite opinion, then sometimes it is difficult to get closer. But no, it doesn't mean that all audiences need to be friendly. Definitely not. That's a brilliant distinction to understand. Authentic, yet which part is relevant? Yes, relevance is very, it's always important. I like to share the image of, when people ask me about authenticity and they challenge me on, well, I should bring my whole self to work. I should say I'm a mother of two. I'm responding, well, I'm a wine lover. Should I stand up and say I'm a speaker, I'm a trainer, I'm a coach, I'm a parent, and I'm a wine lover? No, right? I'm a wine lover just as much as I'm a parent. So why should I share that I'm a parent when I'm in a professional situation? I'm not saying hide it. I'm simply saying what's relevant in that situation. If I share with myself, if I share with my audience that I'm a parent, there needs to be a point to it. It needs to be relevant. And this is one of the things that I think a lot of speakers have misunderstood in terms of being authentic, that they will start their speech with, and this is my family, here are my beautiful kids, because they want to be authentic. It's not authenticity. You could be fighting with your wife and your kids every single evening when you get home. So showing a picture of that family, if that's the case, would rather be inauthentic than authentic if you show a picture of a happy family. So it has nothing to do with authenticity if you share a picture of your family. It's simply shedding a little bit of light on your private life. So then we have, it's a noisy and crowded space these days. How can one speak up and stay true to values and still make oneself heard? Any tips you can share? Okay, I have one example that I'd love to share with you. And that is from a social media interaction I had the other day. It's about this asking questions. It was a post about it was a US discussion of kids going back to school, pro or against. And I wrote as a question, how about, actually several questions in the statement, how about we reframe the question and say, what is needed in order for kids to go back to school? So that was being a mediator a little bit, getting people to think in different ways. It's an example of how you can ask question when it's a minefield out there. And this is one of the situations of that you're mentioning, right? How can you make a difference? There were quite a few people who reacted to this. It was a big post. I think it was CNN article or something like that. But because I brought in this different perspective, quite a few people reacted to that rather to the pro shouting and the con shouting. So yes, bringing in different perspectives in a neutral way, simply getting people to think about things. That is one of the ways that I definitely can advise for speaking up and asking questions instead of being very blatant about your opinions. All right. And again, I'm not saying you should not say your opinion. I'm simply saying that in some instances, asking these questions can be a lot more fruitful. Also because you get more information. Again, back to the moon, trip to the moon example that I gave just now. You could be open to the notion that you might learn something when you ask a question. All right. Share with purpose. Absolutely. We've been speaking about this a lot for the last few days. It is about purpose. Tallulah, excellent points, Mette. Great reframing. Carry wisdom. Thank you so much. All right. Any last questions before I hand it back to Tahira? Tahira. Tahira is not here. Okay, then I won't hand it back to you. All right. So thank you very much for being here with me today. I hope that I was able to reframe a couple of the notions you have about speaking up. I know that several of you are already very, very inspirational yourselves. And I am looking forward to networking with you afterwards. See you in a minute.